It's easy to look at the U.S. Constitution and see a flawless masterpiece from 1787, but the original document was riddled with dangerous errors. The text drafted in Philadelphia completely failed to define what an American citizen actually was. It restricted the right to vote to an exclusionary minority of wealthy landowners, and it lacked the economic engine required to fund a growing nation. Even the celebrated Bill of Rights, added shortly after ratification, left these systemic bugs entirely unresolved in the government's operating system. To understand how the American government actually functions today, we have to look past the original parchment and examine the massive, radical edits made by later generations. The American public treats the Constitution as a working blueprint, requiring active, ongoing problem-solving to keep the country running. The original blueprint left a gaping hole in the foundation of the Republic. It never defined who qualified as an American citizen. The consequence of that omission became brutally clear in 1857. In the Dred Scott decision, the Supreme Court ruled that Black Americans were considered property and could never hold citizenship in the United States. Following the Civil War, the nation installed a constitutional patch designed specifically to overrule the Supreme Court. The 14th Amendment declared that anyone born in the United States is automatically a citizen. It then went a massive step further. By mandating equal protection of the laws, this edit severely restricted the power of state governments to discriminate against their own residents. By codifying citizenship and mandating equality, this amendment authorized the federal government to actively protect individual civil rights against state-level discrimination for the first time. The original text contained another glaring omission. The phrase, "we the people," functionally meant a tiny fraction of the population, because the Constitution left voting laws entirely up to the states. Fixing this exclusionary system required a century-long struggle, which forced 4 separate, grueling interventions into the constitutional text. First came the 15th Amendment in 1870, prohibiting states from denying the vote based on race. 50 years later, the 19th Amendment finally forced states to recognize the voting rights of women. Still, states found loopholes, weaponizing poll taxes to financially block poor and minority voters. In 1964, the 24th Amendment outlawed the practice entirely. The final major voting rights patch arrived a few years later with the 26th Amendment, which lowered the national voting age to 18. The catalyst for this change was a tragic irony playing out overseas. Young men were drafted to fight and die in Vietnam, yet legally denied the right to vote for the leaders sending them into combat. Without these 4 distinct interventions, the majority of the current American population would be legally excluded from participating in their own government. Beyond expanding human rights, the government's structural machinery was struggling to keep pace with the demands of the 20th century. By the late 1800s, Congress needed a reliable way to fund a modernizing industrial nation. They passed an income tax, but the Supreme Court blocked it, ruling Congress lacked the proper authority. In 1913, the 16th Amendment bypassed the court's interference entirely. It explicitly granted Congress the power to collect taxes on income, laying the financial groundwork for the modern state. There was also a looming vulnerability in the executive branch. The original Constitution placed no actual limits on how long a president could serve, relying entirely on the polite tradition set by George Washington to step down after 2 terms. That fragile norm shattered in the 1940s. Confronting a global depression and a world war, Franklin D. Roosevelt won 4 consecutive elections. To prevent future leaders from establishing themselves as elected kings, the 22nd Amendment hard-coded the 2-term limit directly into constitutional law. A surviving republic cannot rely on the good behavior and polite traditions of its leaders. It requires hard, unbreakable boundaries to maintain the balance of power. The Constitution is physically preserved under glass at the National Archives, appearing as a finished, static text. In practice, the 14th, 16th, and 22nd Amendments function as essential upgrades, proving the document requires constant, rigorous maintenance to remain functional. The Article 5 amendment process serves as the ultimate veto power. It is the mechanism that allows citizens to overrule bad Supreme Court decisions, adapt to complex economies, and expand human rights across generations. The American system survives precisely because it is an unfinished blueprint. We, the people, retain the ultimate authority to actively edit, patch, and fix the Republic.